Hi, my name is Cihan Biyikoglu. I'm a program manager in the SQL Azure team, and I'm here to tell you about SQL Azure federations. Federations simply bring in the sharding pattern into SQL Azure. Sharding pattern is used across many different applications on the web to build social networking sites or large email services or online auction sites that are fairly popular and used by a lot of different people. For this size and scale, a cluster of machines are utilized and computational capacity of many nodes are harnessed. Federations simply bring in this model into SQL Azure and extend the classic canonical tree-tier applications scalability model in the front and middle tiers to the database tier. In the classic canonical tree-tier applications, as the user workload grows, you add more front and middle tier nodes to expand your capacity and handle that larger user traffic. Database tier has never actually provided the same capability until federations. With federations, you can do the same in your database tier and expand your capacity by adding more databases and adding more members to your federation. So why use federations? Well, there are a number of great benefits to highlight. First one is unlimited capacity. With SQL Azure federations, you can harness the capacity of hundreds of nodes. Another great reason is great economics. Elasticity overall is a great principle that's applied to many of the components under the Windows Azure platform umbrella. And with SQL Azure federations, that elasticity comes to the database tier. So as your traffic grows, you can grow your database with it and don't have to allocate overcapacity ahead of time before you need that traffic. With the pay-as-you-go model, all of that creates a great set of economics for applications to use, and they can grow with their workload over time and only pay for the things that they use. Another great capability that comes with federations is the ability to build flexible tenancy models. You can certainly build applications using a single database per tenant, as long as your tenants are small enough or large enough to fit into the scale-up limits of a single SQL Azure database. With SQL Azure federations, you can create much more flexible tenancy models if you've got very small tenants or very large tenants. Let me give you an example. In the case of a small user on a social networking site, you may be needing only a few megabytes of storage to service that user. The smallest database on the SQL Azure surface today is a gigabyte database. So if you were to go with a tenancy model that created a single database per user, you would end up with many, many databases and a capacity overage that's fairly high. In multi-tenancy models, you can pack a lot of users into a single database. The problem is, over time, some of these users may actually grow. So that static decision about how many tenants you want to pack into a single database cannot be static. With federations, you can engage online repartitioning operations and without any downtime expand and shrink your capacity so that you can place 1,000 tenants or tomorrow have 500 tenants in each one of your tenant databases and change your mind about how you place them. This same concept applies to very large tenants as well. For tenants that may be satisfied with a single SQL Azure database with 150 gigabyte storage capacity, for example, it's perfectly fine to use that single database. But for very large customers who may need more computational capacity or storage capacity beyond that, you can use federations to utilize multiple nodes and service that large customer. But it's hard to make a static decision about whether to use 5 nodes or 10 nodes or 20 nodes for that large customer, or maybe even more. And with federations, you're not stuck with a static decision. You can decide based on that customer's workload over time how many nodes you actually like to spread that customer over to. And with federations, you don't have to take any downtime in your application to do that. All right, now that we've seen what federations are, let me show you how you can stand one up. I'm currently in the SQL Azure Management Portal, connected to my Blogzaurus database. And I'm going to create a federation with the actions at the top. This is the new federation action at the top, and there's a couple of pieces of information you need to provide. First one is a name for the federation. We'll name this blogs federation. Second piece of information is a distribution key name. This is basically a label for the federation key that we'll use to identify the federation key in our federated tables in future. We'll just call it ID. Last, I get to select a data type. There's a range of options that I can have for my federation key, but we're going to go with big int. If I save, this is going to, in the background, create a federation with the first federation member. One of the options you will also get is the ability to go into a detailed view of your federation, where you can look at an overview of all your federation members. Obviously, in this cold start scenario, we've got just one that we're starting with. This is a single federation member, and you can call out a number of different actions with the inline actions in the management SQL Azure Management Portal. The first thing we'll actually do is go deploy our schema. I'm going to use the query action and new query to connect to my federation member, and we're going to deploy our schema. This statement at the top is going to allow me to connect into the federation member. And then the rest of the script should look really familiar. I'm just going to create the tables I'd like to scale out. There are 3 tables here that I'm going to scale out. And for the most part, it is the create table statement that you know and love. But there's some additional annotations that I'm adding to signify which tables I'd like to federate on, which columns I'd like to federate on, and which tables are going to be federated. So for the blogs table, for example, I've added the federated on clause at the end with an identifying section annotation at the bottom that points to the blog ID column as the federation key. I'm doing the same for the next set of tables. The only one that's interesting to point out is a reference table that I'm creating at the end called language codes table. This is a lookup table that I'm going to want to have in federations. And as I split, this table is going to behave differently compared to the federated tables. So it's going to get cloned. If I run this, I'm going to create my schema inside the federation member. Now that our schema is deployed, we can continue on and kick off operations like split to scale out the database that the federation that we've just created. So I can kick off these operations with inline actions right from SQL Azure Management Portal. And with the inline actions, I can do that from the details page for the federation. Here's a split operation that I kicked off at value 1000. What's great is that SQL Azure Management Portal also gives me indications of ongoing operations. So this is an indication that a split operation is in progress. And I can get progress reports right from this detailed view. If I refresh, I can get updates on how far the operation has progressed. And eventually, we're going to see a second federation member pop up with a split point of 1000, just in the middle of the two. All right, and finally, you can see the split operation complete. And now I've got 2 federation members that the first one containing minimum to values all the way to 1000, and the second one containing values from 1000 all the way to the maximum. And over time, as you use your federation, I just wanted to pull this up and show you what it will look like with the full view of this federation. Imagine blogs.rs database getting expanded with the many federation members, and in this view, I've got 45 federation members with indications on actions that I need to take immediately, such as size pressure and specific federation members. But the page gives you great ability to visualize all your federation members at the bottom with an overview and detailed actions at the top with individual federation members as you scroll through the view. With the manageability tools, building very large-scale database tiers becomes much easier for both developers and administrators as they can work with these tools and accelerate their development lifecycle. You can get more information about federations from the online documentation on MSDN or from my blog. I'm also watching Twitter. You can always tweet #SQL Federations or follow me on Twitter for more information on federations.